Alright guys, Rob and I ripped this off yesterday. This is my old 4-barrel Holley throttle body injection. To give you a hint, last time it was used, the inspection sticker is from 1996 on the car. Yeah, that was right around the time, I got married. Oh well, don't let that happen to you. So, what am I going to do with it? Well, it had early 80s porting on it. It was all cartridge rolled. But certain things like these dividers were still square. I didn't take out every little nook and cranny that I could have. So I changed that now, and of course I did a texture on it. I've run the throttle bodies with a cartridge roll, and I've run them with the texture. They love the texture because if you take a look at the fuel injectors, right? These are low pressure injectors. These are about 80 pounds an hour. It actually looks pretty good. But if you can see right down its throat there, it's got 6 little tiny holes. I think it's 6 anyway. Where the fuel squirts out. And it squirts out in 6 fat jets. And those jets spray all on the side here and on top of the blade, and then get pulled down. So if you break the fuel up with a little bit of a texture, it works way better. I did this with the 4-barrel fuel injection that's on the old work truck now, and I couldn't believe the difference. I had that throttle body off for some reason, and I said, well, while it's out, let's see what we can do on it. This I took an entire day going over it. It doesn't look, the base with the blades is relatively easy. This piece, you can really go to town on it, but you have to be careful. You can see I got pieces of duct tape all over it because it's full of fuel holes where it's been drilled and plugged in order to get the fuel from these 2 holes in the back, from the regulator, up to the injectors, and then bypass past the injectors. Let's take that tape off and take a look at it. The reason it has the tape on there is I didn't want to get any dirt inside while it was being ported. Alright, it is a casting, so it's not perfect in every way like my wife, but it can be improved quite a bit. Now, I didn't think of showing you guys what this looked like beforehand, but these holes are not bored in the center of the casting. You can see how much thicker this is here, but this was very square all the way out to here. So I changed that radius all the way around and textured it all the way around. You can see these dividers here. You can narrow them down quite a bit, but you do have to be careful. There is a hole going through it. Right? The hole goes up to this plug, and then it goes out to, obviously, that hole. So that is the supply. The return, I believe, goes through and down and out on the this one. Whatever, doesn't matter really. One goes in, one goes out. Now, it's an interesting design, right? With the low pressure injectors, the only thing that seals them is the 2 O-rings. Now, considering this thing was built in the 80s and has been sitting around with nasty old gas in it since the 80s, it looks pretty good to me. I like how they did it. Everything is O-rings, so that's nice. So it goes back together easy. I just use a little Vaseline on the O-rings and it snaps right back together. So what I did is I tested this throttle body with the 80s porting on a cartridge roll, and then I did it the way it is. It actually does lose a couple CFM, but the garage is also 4 degrees hotter, so take that with a grain of salt, because that's how long it took me to get all this ported. Really, it took almost a whole day. So I started off, now We'll go over the flows later. I'm going to show you how this goes together now. Okay, we've got these 2 aluminum barrels that go to our inlet and outlet port for our supply and return. Now, see if we can do this with one hand. Okay, coat it liberally with a little Vaseline. And you just push it into place. And it's done. That's it. That's all there is to it. What's nice about Vaseline is I even put the injectors in with Vaseline. Because as soon as gasoline hits the Vaseline, it just dissolves it and the engine will eat it up. It's not a problem. Alright. Those really old O-rings don't feel good, so I'm going to see if I can find my O-ring kit. I may have something that small. Okay, looks like an RO6 O-ring. You can see the old one and the new one. Little different shape and size, right? Okay, some of those O-rings were so hard they broke coming off. They were shot. Okay, I made a mistake. It's an RO7. Much closer in size to the originals. Okay, the way to find out if you have the right size O-ring, if you listen closely, pops into place nice and tight. Okay, I actually lubed the barrel and I lubed the O-rings on the injectors, and then I just use a pair of slip joint pliers to put them in. When you do that though, you cannot be anywhere near those injector holes. The rest of it, you could lean on it with a pair of pliers to push them out and to put them in. To put them in, you're going to be leaning on this black phase plug here that they have. It does go in. It does have a positive and a negative on it, so they do have to all be facing the same way. Okay, I don't want to lose you on pause, so I'm doing them one at a time. Okay, all the injectors are set. Now let's just see if we can put this together. Now you have to compress both of those O-rings, so you do have to lean on it. I'm going to have to pause you. Okay, the injector pods are held in with 3 Phillips head. Then we can put our electrical wires in place. Okay, the electrical connectors aren't really much. Oh, that one is actually offset. I'll have to take a look at that. That may be just because I twisted it. But obviously, if they're not touching the electrodes from the injectors, that's not going to work. And if you need to spin the injector a little bit, you just grab it with a pair of pliers and it'll twist real easy. Because these pods they've got nipples on them, and the nipples have to fit into the injector pod housing. Okay, I checked those electrodes. They're supposed to look like that. Okay, all the pod caps are on. Now you just have to add on the bolt that holds the air cleaner on. Okay, you can make fun of my broken a dozen times bolt that holds the air cleaner together. Why was it broken so many times? Well, first of all, it was extended because I run a 6-inch open element, 6 inches high, K&N. The other problem is when I would get on it, it would torque the motor enough that it would hit the hood and snap it off. So I had to build a restraint system for the engine with some welded components on the chassis and some cable to keep it from torquing enough to hit the roof. Okay, so I tested it a couple different ways. Now remember, because it has linkages, right? I have to use my wooden spacer, and I can only test one barrel at a time. So all the flows you guys are going to see is going to be one barrel. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say the front barrels probably flow more because they're more open than the back barrel. And one back barrel is open more than the other. Okay? Now, these are rated at 900 CFM from Holley. So that's at 1.5 inches of mercury, which is about 20 inches on the flow bench. I didn't change it over. I left it at 28. So let's take a look at our flow sheet that got speckled with oily chips. Okay. This is what we've got. We started out just using a 300 CFM plate, but it's on top of the bore adapter. The bore adapter will add CFM, so that's 316. Then if I add my wooden spacer to it, which is a little bit smaller than my 300 CFM plate, it went up to 389. Then I popped the throttle body injection on, it went to 301, which we can compare right to this one now. So I lost about 9 CFM. Even though I did a bunch of work to it, I also added texture, and it is now 87 degrees in here. I started at 80 degrees. So that makes a difference. Even if I did lose a few CFM, I know the throttle body will work better with the texture, so I'm gonna say it's a go for me. And the other flow was no injectors. This was just the base with the fine cartridge. It pulled a 306 from one barrel, and no injectors, 299. Okay, pretty close, considering there was a temperature difference. The only other thing I did is the Holley came with this spacer. It's not really well designed. It's just square. It's got lots of sharp edges all over it. But it's designed to fit around the wiring and give your air cleaner a base. Okay, it's got a little notch for the electrical wires to come up. And putting that on knocked us back to 288, which is about what it flowed before I touched it. Remember, it was ported with a cartridge roll. So even though it's hotter here, it's flowing about what it flowed with the cartridge roll finish with the rough texture. Because I did take a lot of curves and made it better on this. I know it's going to work better. An interesting point with throttle body injection is the way they feed air in is really from an angle like this. It's almost coming in sideways. Okay, because the pods are blocking a lot of the path. Okay, so what we used to do on the stockers was take the pods and space them up. You could usually get away with 2 gaskets and space them up quite a bit. And then, of course, mill down. They had a sharp edge. They had a sharp edge all the way around. You could mill out and put a nice radius like this has on it. And it would help. I'm gathering all the stuff together to do a GM stock throttle body. Somebody said he was going to send me some heads, but they haven't shown up yet. In any case, this is all back together and ready to put on the old work truck. Am I foolish? Yeah, probably. But it's not being used. I really wanted to get a better fuel injection system for both vehicles, the old work truck and the Chevelle, but what did Rob say yesterday? He's like, dude, carburetor. I'm like, tunnel ram. He's like, I didn't say how many carburetors. So we'll see what happens in the future. But as of right now, I'm going to say that was not the easiest day in the world getting that all set up the way I wanted it to. But overall, it looks good. I know it has new O-rings. I'm not going to have to worry about any fuel leaks. And, you know, for sitting for so many years, I think it looked pretty good. Those injectors didn't have any dirt or anything on them. And that car had a pretty nasty tank in it. That tank is definitely not usable at this point. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good night.